I used to think everyone started life the same way, that we were all born with a family, a name, and a place that felt like home. But I learned early that for some of us, life begins with a question. And for me, that question was, where do I come from? The first memory I have is of a dusty window and the smell of bleach. I remember the silence of that small room more than anything. No one ever talked much there. No bedtime stories. No good morning hugs. Just the mechanical sounds of dishes, footsteps, locks clicking into place. I called the woman who raised me Lori, but she wasn't my mother. She never said she was. She never said anything. I was maybe 4 or 5 when I began to feel it. That ache. Like something inside me had been pulled out too soon. I didn't have the words for it then. I just knew that when I saw other kids run into their mom's arms after school, something in my chest tightened. Something told me I didn't belong. Lori wasn't cruel, but she wasn't loving either. She made sure I had food and clothes. She took me to school, but she never looked at me the way other adults looked at their children, like they were a part of them, like they mattered. I was more like a responsibility she couldn't get rid of. It wasn't until I turned 11 that I overheard something that changed everything. Lori was arguing with a man late at night, her brother, I think. I was pretending to sleep, but I heard him say, "You should have told someone when you found her. You don't just keep a kid like that." That sentence echoed in my head for years. Found her? What did he mean? Had I been lost? Stolen? From that moment on, I became obsessed. Every library computer, every stolen moment online, I searched. I looked through missing children databases, scrolling through faces that might have been mine. I compared baby pictures I found in Lori's old photo box to online flyers. Most days, I found nothing. Some days, I found hope, until it slipped away again. I didn't dare ask Lori. I knew she'd shut down or worse, punish me. So I waited. I planned. And I watched. By the time I turned 18, I left. Legally, I could. I had no records. No real ID other than the one Lori managed to get somehow. But I didn't care. I packed everything I had in a duffel bag and took the first bus out of town. I bounced around for a while, couch to couch, working at diners, saving every dollar, all the while, and still searching. I created forums, posted online, sent emails to organizations that helped adopted or missing kids. Most of them never replied. Some did, but they didn't find anything. I was starting to feel like a ghost. Then, one night, something strange happened. I was volunteering at a local shelter, something I started doing just to feel less alone. A woman came in looking for her lost dog. I remember she was crying, frantic. I offered her a cup of tea, sat her down, and listened. She looked at me for a long time before whispering, "You have her eyes." I asked her what she meant, but she just shook her head and left. Her words haunted me. I had whose eyes? I didn't even know what I looked like as a baby. Lori never kept pictures of me younger than 4. What if this woman recognized something? Someone? I tracked her down 2 days later. Her name was Marianne. She worked at a florist shop in the next town over. When I walked in, she looked like she'd seen a ghost. I told her everything, or at least everything I knew. She asked if I'd ever heard of the Dawson case. I hadn't. 21 years ago, a 3-year-old girl named Emily Dawson vanished from a state park in upstate New York. Her parents had taken her camping for the weekend. One minute she was chasing butterflies, the next, gone. No trace, no evidence, just heartbreak. Marianne told me she was their neighbor back then. She said she used to babysit Emily. She even had an old photo of her, a toddler with big brown eyes, a tiny scar on her chin. I froze when I saw it, because I had that scar too. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the photo until morning. I didn't want to believe it because hope was dangerous. Hope made you fall apart when it didn't come through. But I had to know. I had to. I contacted a private investigator, an old man who'd helped reconnect adopted kids with birth parents. I gave him everything I had: my story, the photo, the possible match. He promised nothing but agreed to look. Weeks passed. I kept working, kept searching. But every time I passed a mirror, I saw someone else's face. Not Lori's, not mine. And then, 3 weeks later, the PI called. "I think I found something," he said. "You might want to sit down." I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember saying anything. When the call ended, I was just staring at the wall, heart pounding, ears ringing. The investigator had said one word that changed everything: DNA. He had managed to find an old toothbrush, something my supposed mother had kept for years. I had no idea she even had it. He also got in touch with the Dawsons through a lawyer. They'd agreed, cautiously, to provide a DNA sample. After all these years, they were still hoping, still grieving, still waiting. It was a 99.7% match. Emily Dawson. That was me. I had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. I thought I'd scream. I thought I'd collapse in tears. But instead, I just sat there in silence. For the first time in my life, I had a name, a real name. I had parents out there, not perfect strangers, not a blurry photo from a flyer, but people who had loved me once, people who had never stopped searching. And yet, I hesitated. How do you walk back into a life you never knew? How do you meet people who loved the version of you that disappeared over 20 years ago? I wasn't a toddler anymore. I wasn't who they remembered. I wasn't even sure who I was. The PI gave me their contact details. He said they were cautiously hopeful, that they wanted to meet me, but only if I was ready. I wasn't sure I'd ever be ready, but I told him yes. We arranged to meet in a small cafe in Albany, a place halfway between my current town and theirs. It was neutral, quiet, no media, no dramatics, just people trying to stitch something back together. I got there early. Too early. I couldn't stop fidgeting. Every time the door opened, I flinched. I rehearsed what I'd say. "Hi, I think I'm your daughter." No, too awkward. "It's been a long time." Too cold. What do you say to people who lost you? And then they walked in, first the woman, petite, with kind eyes and graying hair. She stopped in the doorway, searching the room, and then locked eyes with me. Her hand flew to her mouth. The man beside her was tall, stiff, like he was holding his breath. They both stared. I stood up slowly. No one said a word for a few seconds. It was like everything had gone silent again, like back in that room when I was a kid. And then suddenly, she rushed forward and hugged me, tight, so tight it hurt. I didn't move at first. I didn't know if I should. But then something cracked inside me, and I hugged her back. She sobbed into my shoulder. "You're real," she kept saying. "You're here. You're home." The man, my father, stood there, eyes glassy, hands trembling. Then he stepped forward and put his arm around both of us. I didn't cry. Not yet. I felt like if I did, I'd never stop. We sat down, ordered tea. They asked me questions about where I'd been, how I'd grown up, what I remembered. I couldn't give them much. My memories from those early years were blurry at best, and the rest, well, they weren't easy to talk about. I told them about Lori and the way I lived. I told them I was never hurt. But I was never truly loved either. My father clenched his jaw when I said that. My mother reached across the table and held my hand. And then, finally, I asked the question that had haunted me for years. What happened that day in the park? They both went quiet. My mom explained in a soft voice. It had been a warm afternoon. We were playing near the trees. She had turned away just for a second to grab the juice box from the cooler. When she turned back, I was gone. They searched everywhere. The police were called. Dogs, helicopters, volunteers. But no trace. It was like I had vanished into thin air. They said the hardest part was the lack of closure. There was no body, no evidence, no ransom call, just silence. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. People stopped looking, but they never did. They kept my room. They kept my photo on the mantle. Every birthday, every holiday, they left the porch light on. Just in case. I didn't know what to say. All those years, I thought no one was looking for me, but they never stopped. After lunch, we walked to the park nearby. It wasn't the same place I vanished, but it was symbolic. I watched them walk ahead, hand in hand, like people who had endured something unspeakable and survived. I walked behind them, trying to picture that little girl, Emily, me. I wasn't sure how to fit her into who I was now, but somehow I had to try. That night, they offered to let me stay at their house. My house, I guess. I said no, not yet. It was too much, too fast. I needed time, but I promised I'd visit again, and I meant it, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing shadows. I was walking towards something real. In the days that followed, I found myself drifting between two versions of reality. The one I had always known, lonely, quiet, uncertain, and this new, fragile version, full of names, stories, and emotions I didn't know how to carry. Emily. I still wasn't used to hearing that name spoken aloud. It didn't feel like mine, not completely, but every time my mother said it, with a tremble in her voice or a soft smile, I wanted it to be mine. I wanted to belong to something, to someone. I started visiting them more often. At first, just short visits, a few hours, then full afternoons, eventually weekends. Their house was warm, lived in, familiar in a strange way, like a memory I hadn't lived through but still recognized. My old room was still pink, faded wallpaper with little stars on it, a rocking horse in the corner. The bed, too small now, was still made up with a quilt my mom had sewn herself. She cried when I touched it for the first time. My dad tried to hide his emotions, but I could see it in the way he hovered nearby, always making sure I was okay, offering me coffee, fixing things that didn't need fixing. He was trying to be present, not overwhelm me, but also not disappear again. I appreciated that more than he probably knew. But it wasn't all easy. There were awkward moments, silences that stretched too long, questions I couldn't answer, and memories I couldn't share because I didn't have them. I saw the way they sometimes looked at me, as if searching for the little girl they'd lost inside the woman I had become. And I couldn't blame them. I was doing the same thing. I started therapy, something they gently encouraged but didn't push. I didn't expect it to help, not really, but it gave me space to speak things I didn't know I needed to say. About Lori, about the questions that still haunted me. Why had she taken me? Had it been intentional? Had someone sold me to her? Why had she never told me the truth? There were no clear answers. Lori had died 2 years earlier in a car accident. The police had never found conclusive evidence of abduction or trafficking. My case had quietly been marked as unresolved and filed away. It felt like a stolen story, one I'd never fully get back. Still, I tried to piece together what I could: old journals, receipts, photographs from storage boxes she kept locked. Nothing made sense. She had changed our names, moved us from state to state every couple of years, always small towns, always under the radar. I realized I had never had a home, only hiding places. One afternoon, I was helping my mom clean out the attic when I found a small music box. It was dusty, but the design was familiar. I felt my hands tremble as I turned the key. A lullaby played. Soft, sweet, haunting. My mother gasped. "That was yours," she said. "You got it on your second birthday. You wouldn't sleep without it." I held it tighter than I meant to. Something about the melody struck a chord so deep I couldn't speak for a minute. I didn't remember it, but my body did. My heart did. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in the room that used to be mine, staring at the ceiling. I thought about all the versions of myself that had existed. The silent girl in Laurie's house, the runaway teen searching for clues. And now, this woman in between two lives, trying to reconcile the pieces. I didn't know how to be Emily, but I wanted to learn. So I started asking more questions. I let my parents tell me stories about my first steps, my favorite stuffed animal, how I used to love dancing to the radio in the kitchen. I couldn't picture those moments clearly, but I wanted to hold on to them anyway. They became part of me, even if I couldn't remember them. We even went back to the park, the one where it all happened. I was hesitant at first, but they insisted on coming with me. It was quiet, peaceful. The trees had grown taller. The picnic area was still there. My mom pointed to the exact spot she last saw me. She cried. I didn't. Not because I wasn't feeling it, but because I was overwhelmed in a way I couldn't explain. I felt grief, yes, but also awe. Awe that we were standing there together. That I was alive. That I had made it back. On the way home, I asked them something I had been too afraid to ask until then. "Do you still think of me as the little girl you lost?" My dad didn't answer right away. He looked at me in the rearview mirror, eyes soft. "No," he said finally. "We think of you as the daughter we got back." And just like that, something heavy lifted off my chest. I still didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, I felt like I had a beginning. The photo burned in my hands. Not literally, but it felt hot, like it carried fire from the past. Me, barely 4, sitting in the back of a blue van. The woman beside me, tall, black hair pulled into a tight braid, staring directly at the camera. Not smiling, not hiding. It was the first proof that I hadn't imagined it all. I brought the photo to the clinic. The nurse recognized the woman immediately. "Her name's Evelyn Rhodes," she said. "She used to live outside town. Foster parent. Had a few kids come through. Never stayed long." My stomach turned. "She wasn't officially listed as your guardian," the nurse added. "But I remember her. Cold, distant, the kind of woman who followed the rules only when someone was watching." I left with a name and an address, an abandoned farmhouse on the outskirts of Granger County. I drove out there in a borrowed car. The house was empty, long since condemned, windows broken. The porch sagged like a dying breath, but in the backyard, buried under fallen leaves, I found it. A shoe, small, faded red, the same kind described in the original police report. My shoe. I sat on the ground and cried. Not because of the shoe, because I wasn't crazy, because someone had taken me, because for the first time, I felt like I belonged to something real. I texted Marianne. She didn't respond, so I went back to her bakery. This time, it was open. She was behind the counter, rearranging cupcakes. She looked up and froze. I walked straight to her. No words. I pulled the photograph from my jacket and handed it to her. Her hands trembled as she took it. She stared at the image for so long, I thought maybe she'd forgotten how to breathe. "This was her," she said, voice breaking. "This was the woman." I nodded. "I know who she is," I told her. "And I found this." I showed her the shoe. She gasped, staggered back like she'd been hit. "That's his," she whispered. "That's the shoe they found. You kept it?" I didn't. But someone buried it, like they knew. She reached for the counter, gripping it to stay upright. "Why now?" she asked. "Why did you come back into my life now?" "I didn't mean to," I said. "I wasn't even looking for you. I was looking for myself." Her eyes welled. "I dreamed about you," she whispered. "Every night. I thought maybe I'd made you up, that I was going mad. I thought the same about you. We sat in the back of the bakery. Same table, same tea. But something had changed. This time, we weren't strangers. We were orbiting the same pain." She showed me a box I hadn't seen before. Letters she'd written over the years. To me, on every birthday, every holiday. Never mailed, of course, but folded neatly, dated, full of hope. "I didn't know your address," she said. "So I just wrote into the void." I read the first one. It started, "Dear Matthew, today you turned 5. I wonder if you still like applesauce." I had no memory of it, but something in my chest cracked. "I don't know what comes next," I told her. "You don't have to," she said. We spent the next days talking, piecing things together. She told me about my dad, gone before I was born, about how she worked 2 jobs and still made time to sing to me every night, about the panicked seconds when she realized I wasn't holding her hand anymore. I told her about the dreams, the flashes of sound and smell, the missing years I could never explain. And then the DNA results came. This time, the clinic had a better sample. Hair from one of her saved baby books, and mine from the motel pillow. It came in a sealed envelope. She handed it to me. I didn't open it right away. I looked at her. She looked at me. And we already knew. Still, I unfolded it. 99.998% probability. I laughed. She cried. And for the first time in my life, I said the word. "Mom." It didn't feel foreign. It felt like a song I used to know, finally remembered. She pulled me into a hug so tight, I thought maybe I'd vanish into her again. But I didn't. I stayed, and I healed.